going on, everybody? Hope you're having a good day today. So this video was pretty heavily requested when I started doing this beginner series. I got a video about shoes, clothes, types of backpacks, loading a backpack, backpacking fitment, and I really want to keep this series going. I got a little off pace with it. Really trying to get geared up for this Outdoor Vitals 100-mile challenge, this 100-mile trip that me and a couple buddies are doing on the Superior Hiking Trail. So I've been kind of shifted gears to focusing a lot of my time on getting a pack dialed in that I want to take, getting the tent dialed in. But this is definitely a series I want to keep going. And this is one that when I've posted different things asking for what kind of videos would you guys like to see in the beginner series, a lot of people are asking about cook kits and backpacking food, and it's one I've wanted to put together. I've kind of talked about it randomly in some of the trip videos I've done, but I wanted to do a dedicated video on it. So this video is going to be all about the different types of backpacking stoves, cook kits, a little bit about food as well. This is not all encompassing. There's other stoves out there that maybe I don't have. I'll try to talk about them. This is also not really trying to gear you one way or the other. I'll talk about what my preferred system is, which if you've watched any of my trip videos, you can probably tell. But this is more just to put this out there and give you guys an idea of what kind of systems there are and maybe help you decide what type would work for you. So we're going to start with what I would consider to be more of like a full featured kit, and then work our way down to what would be more like an ultralight kit, and then a couple maybe specialty stoves that I have in there as well. But if you're just getting into this, you walk into your local outfitter store, an REI, start Googling backpacking stoves, you're almost guaranteed for the first thing to pull up to be some sort of Jetboil stove. This particular one is the Jetboil Minimo cook system. So for something like this, like these Jetboil stoves, or there's other types out there, there's some knockoff ones. I think there's one that's like fire maple. If you're in the UK, there's a bunch of different ones out there too. But the draw to these is this is a very kind of all-encompassing system. So the Jetboil Minimo comes with a little kind of bowl. It's also got some measuring units on it too. So it could be used like a measuring cup. Obviously the cook pot, which is insulated too. So it is nice if you heat stuff up in this, it'll help insulate it. It's got the handles that come out. And none of this is going to be like a full-on product review, just showing you some features. You get the lid that's actually on this one, got like a strainer and a pour spout. It's got a little, I can get it out, a little stand for the fuel canister. So it folds out, and then you can take the fuel canisters any size and it'll clip to this. So if you're on uneven ground or something, that gives it a little more of a stable area to sit. Get that off of there. And then I just keep a lighter in here, which we'll talk about in a second. And then you've got the actual stove itself, which, again, this is the Minimo. There's a bunch of different Jetboil style stoves. So this one here, the positives to this is this one has a much better regulator in it, so you can control the temperature much better. To me, a system like this it really shines if you're trying to do more like cooking in the pot, because you can simmer with this. You can control the temperature a little bit better. It also is pretty good against the wind. One, the stove has some wind protection, but then the bottom of the pot, and I believe all the Jetboil ones are like this, has this flux ring. There's probably an actual term. I'll put the link to a lot of these stoves down here, but it helps concentrate the heat, but it also acts as like a wind protector too. So if you're in a pretty windy area, these are nice for that. This is typically like my winter cook kit. It just does a better job at protecting against wind and really applying the heat to boil this really fast. This will boil water very, very quick. You can also get some attachments with the Jetboil too. So this, again, this is more of an elaborate cook system. This one, I also have their skillet system, which if you watched my winter trip we did, we used this skillet to fry some Spam, make scrambled eggs. But you got the non-stick skillet. It's also got the little ring for the stove to put the skillet on. So it comes with a little spatula, and then this little ring here, you fold these little stand pieces out, and then it just hooks right to the top of that, and then the skillet sits on top of there. You can also buy other things for this too, like there's a coffee press attachment that you can do with it. So the idea with this cook system is this is more for the person who wants to play more like backcountry chef. Play is probably a wrong word. This is more for the person who wants to really go out and cook something more than just like the boil in a bag meals. You can do that, clearly. It will boil water just fine, and do stuff like that. But usually I take this kit if I'm maybe not hiking as far. It's more about fun at camp. Like I want to take the French press attachment and make a good cup of coffee with it. One of my first videos from the Wind River Range we took the coffee press attachment and it made some pretty good coffee. But if I want to take the skillet and maybe cook a steak or do something like that, something more creative, this basically gives you a pocket kitchen out in the woods. I can do pretty much anything with this that I could do in my kitchen for the most part with this cook system. The downside to it would just be the bulk. I mean, especially if you start factoring in the skillet, because of course then with this, if I'm cooking a steak or something, I don't really want to eat out of this because I don't want to mess up the non-stick. So you've got different things you can find, like little lightweight plastic plates. You've also got cook kits like this that you can find at any gear store or something. This is UCO is the brand, but it opens up and has like a plate and a bowl and even comes with a mug, So this is, you're getting into that more full featured, a lot of different kitchen utensil kind of things for cooking more like real food. We took that on the winter video with my son, where we used the boil in a bag, the Mountain House beef stew, but then I also made instant mashed potatoes and mixed it up, and we had the plates there to eat off of, and it was really good. So something like this kit is perfect for that backpacker that you're not getting into this to try to be as ultralight as possible. Like you want to bring some fun stuff for camp. This setup gets it done. A lot of videos on YouTube, all you hear about is ultralight this and ultralight that. And we'll get into that in a minute, I promise. If that's the way you're wanting to go, we'll get into that too. But it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with this. If you're geared more towards fun at camp, there's nothing wrong with this cook system. It's not heavy. You can get on Jetboil's site and see the weights of any of these things. I'm not gonna mess with all the weights on this stuff. You can Google them and find them, but even like the skillet, that's pretty lightweight. There's lighter weight skillets. My experience with any of the really ultralight titanium skillets is just everything sticks to it and it just becomes a mess. So for me, if I'm bringing a skillet, this probably isn't exactly an ultralight trip. So I don't care that this is a little bit heavier. It's more about function at that point, and it works really well. But for someone just getting into it that wants an all-in-one system, the Jetboil systems are great, and they make different ones. They have smaller ones that are really geared more towards just boiling water. To me, if that's the route you're gonna go though, these become a little expensive for that. And I'll show you a couple less expensive options for something like that. But you're wanting to get out and you're wanting to focus on cooking and making good food while you're in the backcountry, the Jetboil Minimo is a solid option for an all-encompassing, maybe more full-featured stove. All right, so moving on. So that's much more full-featured. So now we're gonna go with what's probably my most common cook kit for me, is really just a smaller canister stove. So still uses the fuel canisters, right? This one is the Optimus Crux Lite canister stove. So you can find any number of different options for just a basic ultralight, lightweight canister stove like this. This is just the Optimus Crux Lite, but these are stoves that will have a combination of, you know, arms that fold out, the little valve, and then it just screws right to the top of your fuel canister. There's a delivery truck driving by. But just screws right to the top of your fuel canister, and then you turn the valve on for the fuel, light it, and you're good. To me, these make the most sense for most backpacking. It obviously packs down much smaller than the Jetboil system, and it's still going to boil water very quick. Now, something like this you're getting more into, you're really not doing elaborate cooking. I could probably bring my skillet and put my skillet on here. It would work. It's not designed to. The Jetboil is more designed with that stove to simmer and control the flame better, but I'm sure I could still get the job done with this. But for just boiling water and heating stuff up, this is really good. I like the Optimus Crux Lite stove. It only weighs a couple ounces. It's very compact. It's very quiet for a canister stove. I've used it in a lot of my videos, and it does a good job, and it keeps the flame controlled very well. You know, that's something that I look for with a canister stove, because a lot of times when I'm taking something like this, it's because I'm probably gonna cook in the vestibule of my tent, which is a whole nother topic. You gotta worry about ventilation and things like that. But for the purpose of this, you don't wanna be cooking in your vestibule with a out of control flame. So some stoves, you just don't have as much control. You run more risk of being in danger with that. So this one I can control pretty easy. It's like $40, and there's tons of these with different varied features. You know, MSR makes a ton of them. The tried and true MSR Pocket Rocket is awesome. You find some of them that'll have they're more set up for protection against wind. You know, this one's not necessarily one that has a lot of wind protection. But again, I'm usually either got it in the vestibule of my tent, or I just make sure it's protected. I've got other ways I could guard it against the wind if I needed to. Some of these stoves will have built-in igniters as well. However, that's why I have the lighter in my Jetboil cook system. That little piezo igniter stopped working after like my second trip. So I don't know that I would ever rely on one of those, but it's not something I care about as much. But this one really gets the job done for 95% of what most backpackers would need. Now, obviously it doesn't come with a pot, so you'd have to buy a pot. The pot that I use for pretty much every single trip I go on is just the Crux Titanium. This is the 750 milliliter pot. It boils plenty of water to get any boil in a bag meal done. It'll also hold enough where I could boil water for a meal and a cup of coffee or hot chocolate or a hot drink. You can get different sizes in these. They have smaller ones, they have bigger ones. I think I have an 1100 milliliter one back there somewhere too. I don't really use very much. This is about perfect for me. So something like this makes it very easy to keep inside of it, a little lighter. And then now I'm going to show you this cup that I take quite often. I got this from Mini Bowl Designs maybe 10 years ago. I don't think it's made anymore, but you could very easily also buy the Crux Titanium mug, and it will fit right in here as well. But just keep a little cup in there, and then you've got your cook pot as well. This Crux one has little measurements on it too for making sure you have the right amount of water. And this is probably my primary cook system for most trips. Sometimes I don't take the mug. If I'm really trying to save weight, I'll just take this, and I can make my hot chocolate and coffee and stuff in this, drink right out of it. I don't ever cook in this like to make like noodles or ramen noodles or instant mashed potatoes or anything like that. I don't ever eat out of this. So if I drink out of it, it's not really any big deal. But it saves me from having to carry that. Not that these things or like the titanium mugs really weigh anything. There's also mugs like these, your folding collapsible mugs that obviously are very, compact. They don't really weigh anything, but it's just an extra thing that I don't usually always need. And I find most of my trips, I'm fine just bringing that. About the only time I make sure I bring an extra mug would be like wintertime, or if I want to take the fancier, what's the word for it? If I want to take the fancier like pour over coffee filters. So, because that I have to attach to a cup and then pour into. But you don't necessarily need that. To me, this is a pretty good starter system. This is typically what I would push someone towards if they're asking me, if I want to get into backpacking, what kind of cook system do I need? Something like this is about the best thing ever. These are like, I don't know, $25 or $30 for these Crux titanium pots in varying sizes. This Optimus stove was maybe 30 bucks. That's a whole lot cheaper than the Jetboils. Those can get a little bit more expensive. And it all packs down really small too. So that whole cook system fits right inside here. Now that's using the smaller fuel canisters, which are typically enough for me for like 3 nights, but that's usually enough. Some mornings I may boil water, at least for coffee, every morning. Maybe have a hot breakfast, not always. Lunches, I don't normally do hot food. I'll show you some of that. So I don't boil a whole lot of water, but the nice thing about those small ones is I can fit the small fuel can, that Optimus stove, a lighter, all inside here. Now, if I take a cup, I can't really fit the fuel can in here. So that's maybe the only wild card, but that's where these kind of flat ones, the collapsible ones, kind of work, so I can just shove that somewhere else in the pack. But it makes it a very small, compact cook system. So this is what I take most of the time. Now, you can, if you want to be super ultralight, you have the Optimus stove, which I like. If you want to shave another ounce or so, you can go with the BRS Titanium stove, which is popular. You see it on a lot of gear lists, especially for through hikers. Ultralighters are just trying to shave every ounce that they can. This is actually a little canister stove. This thing is like 20 bucks. I think you can still find them on Amazon. Folds out, and it is very, very tiny. Like, you see how small it is, and it weighs nothing. I mean, I think, quite honestly, the little mini Bic lighter weighs more than that. So if you want to go as ultralight as possible, this is another option. Now you may ask, well, why don't you just use this? Why wouldn't you lead off with that? This stove definitely has its positives. For $20, it's ultra lightweight, and it's lasted. I mean, for 20 bucks, this thing has probably got 6 years worth of use on it. And I've never had a problem with it. It works. However, there's really not much control. It's either all on or all off, and it's very loud. And there's zero wind protection with this. So that goes back to what I was also talking about. If you do want to cook in your vestibule or around your gear, it's nice to be able to have something that's a little more controlled. But if you're not really worried about that at all you care about is as lightweight as possible, this thing is great for that. You just got to make sure you're covered so you're not in the wind, because the more the wind messes with the flame, the longer it takes to boil your water, the more fuel you're using. So you got to kind of think of those things. So really, it just depends. You could go either way. There's nothing wrong with this stove. This is the stove my buddy Chad uses all the time. He's used it exclusively for years, wintertime, summertime, springtime, whatever, and has never had a problem with it. The Optimus stove, or these slightly bigger canister stoves, like an MSR Pocket Rocket or something, do a little bit better job of heating the water up and boiling it faster. But if weight is your primary concern above function, these are good for that. And that's maybe these are still functional. Like, I still will take this. If I'm trying to just make sure I'm going as lightweight as possible, like for this 100-mile trip I'm doing, I may take this. But that also fits right in there. Put the lid on and you can seal that down with no problems. So very compact. To me, those are probably the best types of stoves for someone getting into this. You're not going to do as much elaborate cooking as easily. I think stoves like the Optimus one, the Pocket Rocket, there's other brands too. Those are probably a good middle ground because it can do everything. It may not be the best at more elaborate cooking with frying pans and stuff, but it'll get the job done. That little BRS one, that's not going to work. All the flame is in one little spot. It's great for boiling water. That's about all you're going to use it for. Those are kind of my main stoves. So now we're going to talk a little bit about a couple specialty style stoves. The other type of stove you may hear of is something like this. That's an alcohol stove. So alcohol stoves are pretty cool. Instead of the canister fuel, you can actually get like denatured alcohol. What's nice, at least here in the US, you can go to pretty much any gas station and buy this heat. This is for, it's kind of like a fuel injector cleaner, fuel system cleaner. It has to be the yellow bottle. There's also red ones that are more for like diesel vehicles at gas stations. Don't do that because it's not the right stuff and it's not gonna burn right. But you can also buy it like hardware stores. It just has to be denatured alcohol. But what's very cool about these is these are as lightweight as it gets. Now this is one that I made. You can YouTube backpacking alcohol stove, how to make them, and you can find all kinds of stuff. This is literally just a cat food can, a tomato paste can that I pretty much cut in half, and then some plumber's felt. And basically what happens is you put it together like this, pour the alcohol down in the stove. Because of the way I set this one up, that alcohol will get into this carbon felt and it acts like a wick. You light that and this burns, you set your pot right on top of it, and this will boil your water. Again, something like this, you're not cooking like with a frying pan with this. It's not, there's no control over it. You can buy much more elaborate alcohol stove cook systems and do a lot of stuff. I've seen videos of people on here that have them and they can cook a whole meal with a skillet and everything on their alcohol stove. That's awesome, but it requires a lot more parts. To me, if I'm taking the alcohol stove, it's because I'm going as lightweight as possible. Now, what you have to have with the alcohol stove is a windscreen. Something like this, if I lit this flame is blowing all over the place. So you can buy windscreens that are something like this, and it's like an aluminum, they're like little aluminum sheets that you unlock, and it folds out, and you just wrap it around, and then you'd set your pot, obviously not in the container, you set your pot right on top, and it'll boil your water, and that protects it from the wind. Or for me, if I'm using my alcohol stove, it's typically because I'm trying to go as light as possible. This is the Crux Titanium windscreen. It is literally just a thin sheet of, I guess, titanium that I probably need to cut some off because it's a little big, but you just put it over that and set your cook pot on there. And it's heat proof, so it won't catch on fire. But this windscreen with that alcohol stove weighs less than that Optimus stove. The BRS stove, this is gonna weigh about the same. So again, if I'm just getting into this for a beginner and you're wanting to go ultralight, I would just go with the canister stove. It is very hard to beat. Oh yeah, I put it in here. It is very hard to beat something like this for ease of use, ultralight, and just compact. You know, it's very easy to find the fuel cans. The little stove like this is the same weight as something like this, but this is still a little bit more controllable because you can shut it off. One of the problems, at least with this alcohol stove, the one I made, there's really no way to turn this off. Take that out. There's really no way to turn it off. You've got to wait till the fuel burns off. I've seen some where people will blow that out. To me, that's just kind of dangerous, because if you blow on it and you don't blow it out and you blow fuel somewhere, that's on fire. I don't really know that I want to do that. There's some you can buy that have basically a lid you can drop on it and it'll snuff it out. And some of them are sealed too, so you can pour a bunch of alcohol in it, light it, use what you need to do, take your pot off, put the lid on, and then it'll actually screw on, and they're sealed, so you can keep the fuel in it too. For me, I just wanted to play with making one, and I've had this one for a long time, and it works really well. It boils water basically just as fast as that BRS stove. It's the style of this, it's very concentrated for the flame. Some other alcohol stoves too have just little like holes drilled into it. Like you can actually just take a cat food can and drill holes in it and do that and fill the cat food can with alcohol and light it. The downside to it is the alcohol stoves, you have to give them time to what they call bloom, basically. If you just had that with little holes and you lit it and immediately set your pot on it, you can snuff the flame out. With this, because of the wick and the way it's set up, I set my pot right on the top of the tomato paste can, and the flame is coming out the wick here, so it doesn't snuff it out. So it is a pretty cool design. I can't take credit for it. I found it on YouTube. But that works really well. And to me, this is kind of one of those, I haven't used it in a while. The convenience of the canister stoves kind of outweighs the ultralightness of this because of ones like that BRS stove. If you've watched any of my videos, yeah, I like ultralight gear and I really do pay attention to weight, but I also care about functionality. And sometimes I'll carry the extra few ounces that this stove may be, although we're getting into that whole, I wouldn't notice a difference in my pack if I was carrying this versus the alcohol stove. I won't. But the functionality of being able to cook in my vestibule if it's raining out or just crappy, you know, I can unzip the fly a little bit and cook right there. I've seen people do it with alcohol stoves. You know, again, with something like this, that flame's just wild, and I've got to wait till it just goes out. There's no easy way to put it out. And I guess in my mind, I just think, God, if something went wrong in the vestibule of my tent, that's kind of difficult. So, you know, it just depends. If you're never gonna cook in your vestibule, then this is fine. Like for us on this 100-mile trip that we're gonna be going on, we're primarily not even really gonna be cooking where we're camping, whether it's you have to cook in a designated food area. You know, we're going up on the Superior Hiking Trail, so there's bears and stuff. Probably not gonna be cooking in the tent, because if something happens, I don't want food spilled right where I'm sleeping. So we'll be away. This would be a good option. And it's probably what I'm gonna take. And again, it's very compact as well. Like the positive to this is I can take my cup too, because I don't have the fuel can, and put this in there, the cup, the lighter, the windscreen will go in here, and it's all in here, and then I just have my bottle for fuel floating around the pack somewhere. So it's also a very compact system. But if I'm giving opinions, for somebody starting out, if you're the type that's wanting to do a lot of cooking, like I said, and that sounds fun to you, and the flexibility of being able to cook real food, the Jetboil systems are awesome. There's a lot of add-ons you can buy to really turn this into a full-on backcountry kitchen. And even if you don't take the add-ons and you're just taking the Jetboil, you know, it's not that much of a difference. You know, it's really not. So you're not saving a ton. If you're the type that is wanting to get into this and knows you're wanting to go lighter weight, you're not really worried about cooking real food, then something like this with your Toast titanium pot and a small canister stove will get the job done. If you're just really drawn to you want to make your own gear or the alcohol stove stuff, then you have these too. Like they're all great options. That's pretty much it for stoves, cook systems. I'm gonna clean this up and then grab my food bag, and I'll show you guys what I take on a typical trip for food. All right, so now the fun topic, food. This food is paired up to take with this cook kit with like the alcohol stove, like, so just boil in a bag stuff. Start off, this is one of the Z-Packs food bags. Now this is the medium sized one, or the smaller of the two, which will hold for me about 3 nights and 4 days worth of food. I'm probably gonna have to get a bigger food bag, but the nice thing with this, it's a DCF material, so I've had this for 6 years now. Hanging it in trees, leaving it out, getting rained on. It's waterproof. That's why I like it, but really any waterproof bag would work. That being said, again, let me preface this with, I don't live in bear country. I've hiked in the Smokies, but there you have bear lockers or places to hang your food, very, very high. We did do the trip in the Wind River Range, which obviously is bear country. It's not required that you carry bear canisters. We hung our food a long ways away from camp. So I don't have a bear can. That trip we did use at least like the odor-proof bags to go inside these, which you can find, but it's not something I normally carry. So that's something you need to be aware of wherever you're hiking. What type of container do you need? A bear can? Do you need to be very sensitive? This trip in the Superior Hiking Trail, we'll take the odor-proof bags and put them in these, and I'm not going to be worried about it. But inside here, so this is just going to be loaded up. I'm just going to pull stuff out. Basically how I would do snacks, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and stuff like that. All right, so now that we got all that out, here's a giant mix of what I would have for 2 days, like an overnight, and then, something like that. So I basically got a solid breakfast, lunch, and dinner, an extra lunch in case I needed it, and some snacks. And that's pretty much all I would need. Now for me, the way I try to do this, when I start, I typically get up, if I'm trying to cover miles, so where this food is set up for what I would take for trying to cover off quite a few miles. There's probably a good 2,500 to 2,800 calories. That's kind of what I try to shoot for when I'm trying to cover off 15 to 20 miles a day. But usually I'd get up pretty early, 7 a.m., maybe have a cup of coffee and tear down camp real quick. That's a good time for me. I'll grab like just a cereal bar. Like these are like the kind cereal bars. This one has protein in it, but something like this is 230 calories right here. So, and I may not even have coffee, depending on how far I'm trying to go. I may just get up, eat that, pack everything up real quick, and go. And then maybe an hour of hiking, cover off a couple miles, then I'll stop and have an actual breakfast. So for breakfast, and you could do, again, any number of things. I've also will take just instant oatmeal packets sometimes. But I like these. These are the ReadyWise brand ones, but it's granola. This is like a strawberry granola cereal. So it's not a hot meal. You just add a little bit of water to it, and it basically is like cereal. But something like this one for the whole package, this is 500 calories. So if you're really trying to cover off mileage, it's something you want to look at. Like, this is not the time to be going out and thinking of this as I'm going to burn calories and try to lose weight. I mean, I guess you're just going for a random overnight. It's not going to hurt you. But if you're trying to cover off, 3, 4, 5 days of a lot of consistent mileage, you've got to be putting calories back in your body. And there's a ton of videos on here that are people way more qualified than me talking about this. But you want to make your life easier while you're trying to cover miles, you got to learn to actually eat while you're out here, and eat smart stuff. When you look at a lot of this, it's a lot of carbs. That's the stuff you need for quick burning energy. And then like dinner, breakfast, that's where I'll get more protein. But these are pretty good. They're super simple. Pour in a little bit of water. You don't have to boil water for it. And like I said, I'll have my drink mixes all in one Ziploc bag. Ziploc bags are your friend for sure out there. But just instant coffees, like these are the Starbucks instant coffees. If you've watched any of my videos, there's usually a rant anytime I take the cheap coffee. I don't know what it is. I go to the store and it just irritates me to spend $9 on the instant Starbucks coffees. But as soon as I get out in the woods with the cheap stuff, I'm just angry. So I just bite the bullet and I buy those. They're about the best ones. You can do the pour overs. Those are good too, but these are just easier. I'll also have different things in here like apple ciders, hot chocolates are good. You know, even if it's not cold, a lot of times right before I go to bed, that's a good way to get some calories and get something in you before you go to sleep. Because even if it's not super cold, even if it's like in the 60s, having a warm drink, then just some calories for your body to be burning overnight helps you sleep warmer. And it's a good way to sneak in some extra calories, especially with some hot chocolate. But electrolyte drink mixes too. You know, you can buy just like the water flavoring, like Mio stuff, but again, you're out, you're hiking, you're backpacking, you're sweating. You've got to be working on staying hydrated. And for me, just drinking water, it doesn't do it well enough. So I'll usually always have electrolytes in my water while I'm hiking, and just really try to be aware of making sure to drink that. And I've really never had any issues with cramps, headaches. Even the time we went out to the Wind River Range and we were hiking at 8,000 and 9,000 feet elevation, for somebody from Indiana that's never dealt with elevation, I had no issue with altitude sickness or anything because I was trying to stay on top of that. So I'm a big believer in electrolyte drink mixes. I like the liquid IV ones. Scratch brand ones are also really good. I will throw that out there as well. They're not as sweet, which kind of makes them good. And then throughout the day for snacks, you know, I like to have stuff like these Honey Stinger, they're energy chews. You could just go buy some gummy bears at the gas station on your way, and that'll get you by. It's some sugar, but these have a little more to them. As far as carbs, they're a little higher calorie again, so that's the point, is you're eating these while you're hiking for a quick snack just to get that quick burst of energy. So I'll usually bring a pack of those a day. So I have 2 different flavors here. I've never had these, but again, as another maybe snack or a supplement for lunch, these Honey Stinger waffles. Again, same idea, 150, 160 calories. A lot of carbs to them, I would assume. Yeah, 19 grams of carbs. So again, just these are easy to keep in your hip belt while you're hiking. It's easy to pull one of these out, eat one of these, take a drink, keep walking, and keep your energy level up. And then I also will take, for like the afternoon, I'm trying some different protein bars. These are from Mountain Ops. I've tried some of their drink mixes and they're pretty good. So these are just, I saw them at my local store here, so I bought one of each flavor, a triple chocolate mudslide and a peanut butter one. Protein bars are usually, they don't taste that good, but it's an easy way to add calories while you're out there. It's easy to eat while you're moving. You know, these are all things that are easy to eat while I'm hiking. So we'll see. We'll see how they taste. The Kind protein ones are pretty good too, but these are 270 calories and they have 12 grams of fat in them too, 20 grams of protein, and 22 grams of carbs. So there's a little more to them than the Kind ones. So, but those would be all my snacks to eat while I'm hiking or just stopping for a 10-15 minute break. That's what that stuff's for. And then for lunches, so lunches for me, now normally, I don't have any in here. Normally I would bring something like this. These Tuna Creations packets, which they have a ton of different flavors of, or you can get chicken ones. Basically walk down the aisle of your grocery store where they have this stuff, and you've got tons of different options for things like this. Spam singles if you want them. But I'll normally take this or pepperoni and a couple tortillas. And that's my lunch. I'll have a tuna wrap, a pepperoni wrap, and then maybe add one of these waffle or a protein bar. And just something like that. And that's usually all I do for lunch. Something else that I like to do too is like you can get little packets of peanut butter or almond butter. They're just little individual packets, like Justin's, I think, is the brand I usually buy, the little white packets. I don't have any. But those are good too to add to your lunch. Well, not add in it. Don't put peanut butter in a tuna wrap. That's disgusting. But afterwards, for something sweet, those are good too. Just more fat, more calories, a little bit of protein to keep you going for the day. If I want a hot lunch, you've got your standard ramen noodles or instant mashed potatoes. Those work too, and you could throw the tuna in there or chicken. Or if you want just a supercharged calorie hot lunch, put these together. It's a ramen bomb. Look it up on here. Sounds disgusting, but it tastes very good. And then I always bring a couple of these gallon Ziploc bags. Like I said when I was talking about the cook kits, I don't like to cook in my pot. The freezer bags, it's got to be I always buy the Ziploc brand. This is not the time to buy the knockoff brand. The Ziploc brand freezer bags are strong enough. You can pour boiling water in here and rehydrate stuff in these. So I can just take my ramen noodles, crunch them up, put them in here with the packet, the seasoning packet, and just pour the boiling water in here and let it sit in this. And this won't melt, and you eat it right out of there. Same with the instant mashed potatoes. So it's a quick hack if you want a bag to cook in because you don't want to cook in your pot. Ziploc freezer bags are your friend. Get the name brand Ziploc ones. You might be able to get away with the great value ones. I don't really want to find out in the middle of the woods and have a melted plastic mess, but it definitely has to be a freezer bag. But those are good for lunches. That's usually what I do. But you can pretty much, anything that you can cook at home just by adding hot water, you can pretty much get away with in the woods. I've seen people bring packets of stovetop stuffing, the Easy mac and cheeses, all kinds of stuff. It really, that whole aisle that has like rice sides, pasta sides, there's a lot of that you see on the AT because it's easy to get a hold of and they're cheap. But anything you can pretty much just add boiling water to is an option while you're out here in the woods. So, but that's what I'll typically do for lunch. Sometimes I'll do hot lunches. Most of the time the wraps are good for me. And then I'll usually bring something. I've really started to like these. My buddy Steve brought one and now I've found them, and it's just kind of good for like an afternoon snack or like an appetizer, or these instant soup packets. This one is a white miso soup. Again, I can put in my cook pot because I'm just gonna drink it. But it's a good hit of sodium, a little bit of calories, but just some extra flavor, something different. They don't weigh anything. Sometimes I don't use them, but it's a nice little touch. And then dinner, I just keep it simple. These, again, are just the boil in a bag meals. You've seen me eat them on a bunch of my trips. You hear me talk about them a lot, but this is the Peak Refuel brand. Without getting into it too much, these are by far my favorite. My last trip I did where I had the Mountain House, like the chicken teriyaki with rice. I talked about it a little bit. That one's only like 500 calories for the whole thing. That's not a lot. This one is 870 calories. And you eat the whole thing, it's 48 grams of fat and 54 grams of carbs and 53 grams of protein. Now that sounds like a horrible idea if you're just sitting at home doing nothing. But if you've just hiked 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles, 20 miles or more, you need the calories to replenish your body. Like it's a big deal. If you start going into a calorie deficit big time out there, you're not going to have the energy to hike, and it's going to be miserable. It's not going to be fun. So that's the main reason I like the peak refuel ones. There's just a lot crammed in here. The other benefit is these are by far the best tasting ones ever. Like, I've never had a bad one of these. I think I've had almost all of them, and they all are better than any other brand I've ever had. And the other benefit to me is they take much less water. This one takes a lot, and this is only requires 8 ounces. So if you've ever used like a Mountain House one, they take like a cup and a half or more sometimes. And the problem with that is if you're camping by water, it's no big deal. But if you're camping up and you're dry camping, right? Like, you have to carry your water to your campsite. Every couple ounces of water becomes a little more important. So to know that at least my dinner only takes on average 5 to 8 ounces of water makes that a little better. But that's why I like these. They taste good. They're very calorie dense. They're not heavy. They're solid. So really, that's it for food. Like, that's how I do it. Again, you can do whatever you want. You can go get beef jerky, get freeze-dried or dehydrated like fruits, like banana chips, apples, chocolate-covered cherries. I've done that before too. Those are really good. Just M&Ms. Peanut M&Ms are one of the best trail snacks ever because they won't melt. The candy on the outside keeps them from melting. So that's a good tip too. You can do whatever you want with that. I think sometimes people assume I have to go down like the camping aisle, or I have to go to a sporting goods store and buy certain things there to take backpacking, and you really don't. I mean, with the exception of these two things, everything else sitting here you can get at the grocery store. And you could easily replace these. You could just have ramen noodles and instant mashed potatoes for dinner and add a chicken packet to it. You can just buy oatmeal packets. I usually always have a spare oatmeal packet in here, and I do. I didn't have to look. Just an instant oatmeal packet. You know you can actually cook the oatmeal in this? Yeah, I bet you didn't. I bet there's a few of you that knew that, but I bet there's somebody watching this that didn't even know you could do that. You can just tear the top off and fill it with hot water to the line. You gotta kind of fold it over and find somewhere to hold it so it stays shut, so it can cook. But you can actually eat it in this, so it makes it, there's no mess. Now, there's only like 90 calories in one of these versus 500 in something like that, but for just an overnight or something, you probably have a box of these in your pantry. It's probably all the bananas and cream because everybody picks around that flavor, or apples and cinnamon. That seems to be the most common. Usually you ain't gonna find the maple and brown sugar. Someone in your house probably already ate that. But you can, those are easy. At the end of the day, the whole point of this, this is part of the beginner series, is just to give you ideas, give you tips, point you in a direction that you're trying to go. Backpacking, I think in general, sometimes if you've never done it before, people are scared of it, which I guess the thought of it, if you're new to this, is kind of scary. You're just gonna wander out into the middle of the woods with whatever you can fit in a bag and survive. I guess that's nerve-wracking the first few times you do it. And I think back to the first time I did it solo. I'd gone with people before a few times, so I wasn't really nervous. I camped very, very close to my car, so if anything happened, it was easy to get back to my car. But sometimes I think we make this too difficult, or we get trapped watching these videos and think, we got to spend thousands of dollars on all this expensive stuff. You don't have to, especially for a cook kit. You could put together this whole cook kit for $60. You could buy basically what's inside here, this Toke's pot, that little BRS stove, and a fuel can and a lighter for maybe $60. And that's all you would need to cook your food and have drinks and whatever else you would need in the woods. So that's it, really. There's not much else to say about food. Obviously, you could bring kind of whatever you want. I would love to see some comments going about what kind of your go-to food is in the woods, what your thoughts are on carrying, how many calories you try to shoot for in a day. Do you even pay attention to it? Do you have good suggestions on bars that are better, drink mixes? Anything like that. Are you the type that likes to bring out real food and cook it? What kind of stuff have you taken out in the woods and cooked? Give us some ideas. I like going on trips where I only go 2 or 3 miles and take real food and cook it. I haven't done one of those trips in a while. So, just because everything I'm doing has been so geared on this Superior Hiking Trail trip coming up, I'm just trying to dial that stuff in. But I'd love to see some comments about that. Cook systems that I didn't mention, if you got favorite brands, throw them out there, because there's hopefully going to be some people watching this that are looking for these ideas. So that's really all I've got to say about food. I can't thank you guys enough for watching these videos. At the time of recording this, this morning I saw I have 874 subscribers, which is just crazy to me. How quickly this has jumped, and I love it. I love making these. It's fun. It's becoming more fun now that I seem to have people who actually watch them. So hopefully I did this video some justice. It was something a lot of you have been asking for. Feel free to comment with questions I didn't answer. The next video I'll be doing is probably gonna be a little bit longer one. We're gonna get into tents, the different types of tents that are out there, the different materials, freestanding, non-freestanding, double wall, single wall, DCF tents, poly, nylon. I'm confused just saying it all. But that'll be a fun one too. So give me a couple weeks to get that one out. And yeah, that's all I got for this. Like the video. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Lots of fun content coming at you. That's it. Have a good day.